Good afternoon, class. I'm Kira Reed, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the social problems of bullying in schools and the policies that come along with that. So right now, I just really want you to close your eyes and imagine your first day of school, junior high, and you're so excited. You already picked out your clothes, you're getting ready, you can't wait, it's your first day. And you get to school and you're bullied. And in an instant, that excitement and joy and happiness turns to fear and just complete and utter sickness. And you have a headache, stomach pains, and you're automatically ready to go home. This happens to nearly 28% of students in today's society. And unfortunately, the age is usually between 12 and 18, and it is the number one place, school. These statistics are from the American Society for the Positive Care of Children, or SPCC for short. Due to these terrible issues, schools have had to put in policies to try to combat these issues from happening, or at least try to prevent them. But how do you approach bullies? Do you punish the bully, or do you try to help the bully? I'm going to go over two different articles that talk about these two different approaches. A newspaper editorial, The Observer, as well as an article by Borgwald and Theos that state their approach as well. There are many people who believe that the correct way to write a policy for bullying is to punish the bully. The Observer newspaper article published out of La Grande, Oregon, agrees with this stance. The author is very clear throughout the entire article in the opinion that bullies should be punished. And not only reprimanded, but I quote, the author states, "We must instead subject bullies to the same harsh light of unwanted attention which they cast on their victims." End quote. After the author continues to completely bash bullies and demand policies to punish them, he ends with a very odd sentence that states, multiple studies show that bullies suffer from the same problems that make their targets vulnerable, one being self-esteem, period. Reducing the incidence of bullying by helping rather than only punishing the bullies would be the ideal result, end quote. So this author starts out by stating throughout the majority, pretty much the entire article, that he or she wants to punish bullies. But then the very last sentence of this article states that helping the bully would be the ideal way of going about this. So it seems as if this author is somewhat contradicting him or herself. So, is helping the bully or punishing the bully the right way of going about the policy? This brings me to my next article, which is helping the bully. Is that the right way to write a policy? You think about a young toddler. When they throw a tantrum, sometimes people don't grow out of that stage, Sometimes toddlers throw tantrums, and that's their way of getting attention. Unfortunately, it's a negative attention that they get, even though they're getting a spanking or maybe timeout or whatever it is that they might get from their parent. It's still attention to them. So you think about adults or teenagers or whomever it is that might be doing the bullying. They're just not growing out of that toddler stage or mentality. So think about that for a second. So Borgwald and Theos in this article, they talk about how bullies should not be punished because it causes a stigma on the bullies, which then causes more covert bullying because they're getting in trouble for something that they're doing, and it puts a stigma on them, calling them a bully, so therefore they're going to do it more. Their article is titled "Bullying the Bully: Why Zero Tolerance Policies Get a Failing Grade." So they're saying that zero tolerance on bullying is getting a failing grade because it's not working. And they're just bullying more. They also state that the beliefs that bully because children who are aggressive, threatening, or demeanoring indicate a lack of appropriate concern for other people. They don't have that effective or empathetic concern for another person's emotional capacity. So therefore, they're bullying them because they don't really care how they feel. So Borgwald and Theos are saying that their lack of empathy is the central concern of bullying, and therefore empathy can be taught. And if it can be taught, then that should be the response to bullying, is to teach the bully how to be empathetic. So there are two questions I want to ask you. One, if your child is a bully, would you want them to be punished, or would you want them, when I say them, I mean the school, would you want the school to punish your children for bullying, or would you want the school to find the root problem and teach them, how not to bully? Thank you for your time.